Hello my lovelies, it's Imani, writer and astrologer, and we're back talking about ascendant overlays. Let's go, let's do it. Jumping right in, ascendant in the 9th house overlay, that is on the docket for today. And with that overlay, the ascendant person here is teaching the house person about unconditional love. This is the 9th house. This is the heights of just beauty. You know, 9 is the number of completion. This is the house where you reach the pinnacle of the things that are in your wildest dreams. It's the pinnacle of spirituality, and it's gonna be the pinnacle of love as well. So can't lie, I do love this overlay. This paired with ascendant in the 5th house, chef's kiss. The house person here could have grown up in some sort of environment where emotions were assumed and not spoken. And what I mean by that is that in this environment, no one actually says how they feel. As the house person, you were just expected to know, to have faith in, to believe that the people that are closest to you do love you. And sure, you know, with the people that you love, the actions, there are different ways that you can pick up on cues and be able to say like, okay, yeah, I can tell that they love me. But sometimes you need to hear the words. That's the hard evidence, okay? That's what was missing from the house person's background. The house person can also come into this dynamic with the ascendant person believing from an old programming that they have to earn love. They believe that just being isn't enough. And it's not like the house person is skeptical, they're just inexperienced. The house person here is teaching the ascendant person about detachment. The ascendant person is learning that you can walk away at any moment. And this can be whether your needs are being met or not. You might be thinking, why would I leave if my needs are being met? I don't know if you guys been hearing this thing like floating around where people are giving their experiences about leaving healthy relationships. And really, that's all about like just following the call, following your purpose. Maybe it is that there is someone that's catering to you and that's loving you in the way that you want, and yet you still feel like you need to be elsewhere, experiencing something else, trying something different. And a lot of people can feel guilt over that, but at the end of the day, you have to go where you feel you're gonna make the most impact. You have to go towards what you may feel is your purpose. And maybe you don't know it's your purpose yet. Maybe you're unsure why, but at the end of the day, intuition, you gotta follow it. So that's basically a lesson that the ascendant person can learn from the house person in this dynamic, that you don't need to wait for things to go wrong to decide that you want to go in a different direction. You don't need to over-explain. You don't need to feel enslaved to another person's expectations or their story about what the relationship is. So yeah, in this dynamic, if you have this in your relationship, it's like, yeah, you guys like each other and you guys can help cultivate a safety between you where you can feel like you can go and do your own thing and know that the person is going to be there waiting for you when you're ready to return. There is that just sense of freedom and not that grasping and desperation per se in this dynamic. But then it's kind of like, because of this line of thinking, this can lead to stuff like ghosting or miscommunication. You know, because the house person especially, you know, they're the one teaching the ascendant person about detachment. So typically, but not as a rule, the ascendant person is used to more clingy relationships. The house person can be more used to being the avoidant. And so it's like the house person can see one thing about the ascendant person and they're like, packing their bags, like, yeah, I'm out. And it can be the smallest, like, most insignificant thing even to them, where they're like, they know it's small, but they're just like, I have the freedom to leave. I can do whatever I want. So if I decide that this is gonna be something I don't want to deal with, then I'm gonna go ahead and get out. In this connection, sometimes it can feel like just as you get close to this person, just as you understand them, they do something that throws you off entirely and makes you feel like nothing that you knew about them before makes any sense. And this is on both ends. Like, so because of this, there can be a feeling of distance in this overlay. Yes, it could also translate into physical distance. You know, we talk about long distance in 9th house synastry, but more often than not, it can manifest as emotional distance. One person can be further along in their feelings than the other person. One person's ready to say I love you before the other person. So again, this can be vice versa, but say it's the ascendant person who has their feelings, or who feels like they're more ahead with their feelings. The house person can see that, and instead of giving it time for them to blossom, even though the ascendant isn't pushing anything, they can be like, oh well, I don't want to be in a relationship where like we don't get there at the same time, so I'ma head out. Like whoever's feeling less ahead with their feelings can then try to use that as an excuse to exit. So the strength of this relationship is really going to depend on how do you each behave with each other during the times that you feel like you have gaps between you. So let's say it's not emotional distance. Some other ways that like gaps in the relationships can manifest is, say one of you has a spiritual awakening and the other one doesn't. The question then becomes, how do you, as the person who had the spiritual awakening, grow with them without trying to force them onto the path that you've been selected for? At the same time, how can you, who had the spiritual awakening, stay rooted in that, as opposed to, because your partner isn't there, now you're just going to be tempted to slip back into old habits? How can you just like remain the example and allow them to hold themselves accountable, allow them to be inspired by the benefits of where you are, allow them just to catch up on their own, at their own pace? And sometimes it does seem like we outgrow people. This isn't to say that you have to stay if you were really committed to the relationship. That's the whole point of this overlay. It's that you can leave when you want. Leaving is not wrong. Staying is not wrong. It's not about what's wrong, what's right. It's like, what is your capacity in that moment of your life? What do you feel like you can handle? This overlay really makes you ponder upon questions like that. So yeah, sometimes we outgrow people, but most times I feel like it's our ego saying that. Like sometimes you're just taking different roads to the same place. If you had just given them the space, they would have gotten there. They would have been able to tell you 3 months later, I love you back. They would be able to reach that level of spiritual awakening 6 months later. It's like, if you are going to separate, have a conscious awareness of why you're doing that. Is it because you're scared of holding that frequency that you've cultivated for yourself on your own? How much do you need your partner to co-sign the direction that you're going in? You know, we enter a relationship to be in union, but we're still individuals. But it's up to you. Can you hold on even though you may not understand their route? And then it's like, how do you nurture connection without relying on sameness? Don't get me wrong, with 9th house synastry, it's still very likely that you guys have a lot of things in common. That is part of the thing that draws you guys together. But it does come up where you can feel like you're at different life stages. Another example, it can be like one person has graduated from school, one person is still in school. Or it's like one person has an established business, the other one is still trying to find their purpose. It could be one person's lived with a partner before and been married, and now that they're with you, you're like kind of feeling insecure about that. You're like, oh my god, I've never lived with anyone. I've never been married. You're my first relationship. Like, gaps like this, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, like sometimes it can feel like you're standing on opposite poles. But this is an overlay that can teach you about the difference between true support and acceptance of another human being versus like invasion of someone's free will. Say you're the person that's tending to be more clingy than the avoidant. You may feel like what's supporting your partner is exposing them to your environment so they can catch up to you. You could be feeling like subconsciously or consciously that you're at a higher level than them, or that you just have more experience or exposure. You know, slight superiority complex where you're just like, okay, I'll come down and help bring you up to where I am. But you know, when you can accept someone by remaining where you're at, staying true to yourself, and also allowing them to stay true to themselves, that's where this really special type of love can grow. But yeah, with this overlay, it's like no matter how it plays out, try not to feel guilty. Everyone has different capacities. Maybe someone decides to separate over something that you feel like if you were in their shoes, you could have handled it and you would have chose the relationship. But like, that doesn't make you better than them. It's not about who is more evolved than the other in this overlay. It's about following your intuition. It's about cultivating unconditional love. And if you follow me on Instagram and if you've been following me along my Substack journey, we know that love, true love, is unconditional, but relationships have conditions. In a perfect world, we can synthesize unconditional love into all our relationships. And just because I love you and accept you for who you are doesn't mean that I have to stay in partnership with you. I feel like I spent a lot of time talking about like separation, but that is on the mind when it comes to this overlay. It's like, what are you gonna allow to break you and what are you gonna allow to make you stronger? Now, if you have the capacity and you go through these gap moments and you both are like, you know what, at the end of the day, I do love you unconditionally, I do accept you, and I want to stay in this partnership regardless of maybe how hard the gap is on me, how hard the feeling is of us not being on the same road right now. Like, getting through that is what makes healthy marriages last. This is a quality that everyone needs to cultivate if they're thinking about long-term partnership. So if you have this overlay, consider this like experience that you're gaining, knowledge that you're gaining, so that you can cultivate a certain type of strength, a certain type of courage within yourself. Regardless of how this overlay plays out, ask yourself, what did I learn about myself and my capacity for love in this overlay? But yeah, last thing I'll say is like, I actually find it with the sun in the 9th house too, where it's like one person has a spiritual awakening, one person doesn't. But yeah, I mean, what can I say? Like, shit happens. This is just the journey. This is just the life journey. So it's nothing to beat yourself up about. But that's all I got. Thank you guys for putting your requests under the comments in the community posts. I have a nice lineup of which ascendant overlays are coming next, so stay tuned and I'll catch you at the next one.